For healthy shame, healthy shame to develop, it is essential that the infant sees shining, loving eyes, so that the need to be seen finds responding, loving, mirroring eyes. Also, it is important that the child is protected and that its boundaries are respected. That a person is reliably present. Healthy shame can develop when the child feels that it is loved for what it is, even if it is weak. Of course it is weak. Even if it shows undesirable emotions such as pain or sadness. Now, pathological shame is set up if the communication between child and parents is disturbed. For instance, if the parents are intrusive, if they don't respect the child's boundaries. I observed that sometimes in downtown Freiburg, there is a mother with a child, and sometimes completely strangers coming here and sort of get very close to see? And when we observe it, we can see this is too close. So when we're doing that, also the child does that, because the child senses, this is too close, a boundary has been trespassed. So when the parents are intrusive, or if the child, this is the setup for pathological shame, or if the child looks into cold or despising eyes, if its need to be lovingly mirrored is not responded, but it means cold staring or whatever eyes. Superstition calls this the evil eyes, a very open motive in superstition, the evil eye, which is killing, makes you freeze, makes you cold. Pathological shame is also set up if the parents cannot mirror their child lovingly because they are mentally absent, because they have been addicted or abused or traumatized. This may be caused by individual failures, but also may be rooted in social conditions such as cultural patterns of child raising. For example, the Nazi Manual of Child Education strongly advises that if the infant is crying, that it should be put into a separate quiet room. It is to be taken out briefly every 4 hours, very precise, to be breastfed, and that's it. So obviously, a reliable, loving mirroring between the parent's eyes and the infant's eyes cannot occur then. So the child experiences that, it feels unloved, unworthy, and existentially threatened, because it is dependent on being loved and being taken care of. Such early experiences may develop into pathological shame later on if a person experiences further humiliation, abuse, or other trauma. This may be, again, an individual's fate, but also may come from collective experience. For example, when people are disdained or excluded because of their wrong gender or their wrong social class. One example would be the pariahs, the untouchables of Hindu society. Pathological shame means that the humiliation that one has experienced is being internalized. The look of the others has now become one's own look of oneself. Recently, there was a study published about the communication between parents and children in dysfunctional families, and it turned out that children who grew up in dysfunctional families get the message up to 400,000 times: you are not worthy, you're not lovable, you're dirt, you're nothing. You can imagine what does that do with the brain, what that does to a person. So the look of the others, up to 400,000 times, the disdaining, negative look, becomes internalized, becomes one's own look at oneself. One's own self-esteem is fundamentally low in that case. Having made a mistake is experienced then as to be a mistake. Shame is a much deeper fear than that of punishment. Shame is the fear of psychological annihilation, of expulsion from society. In such a state of fundamental fear, the so-called reptile brain takes over, that is, The nervous system is focused only on escape from the source of fear. And the nervous system is reduced to the most simple patterns of behavior, that is, fight, flight, or hide. Shame is, quote, a cognitive shock derailing higher cortical functions, unquote, brain Donald Nathanson. Brain research on shame shows that reason, memory, speech, and affect regulations are not or less available in this state. So that what makes us human. Reason, memory, speech, and regulation of affects is hardly or not available in that state, depending on the intensity of shame, of course. In such state, one feels dumb and unworthy, like a nothing. Shame feels so unbearably painful that it will be often defended against. Shame is being warded off, i.e., shame is replaced by other, more endurable behaviors. Some examples. Some examples about how shame is being warded off. And we all do it, we all have learned it, at least in Germany, we have learned to defend it and not deal with it. Some examples. One doesn't show weak emotions such as love, hope, or pity, since they are the most private and vulnerable aspects of oneself. One's emotional life is being frozen, as Simon and Garfunkel are singing, a rock feels no pain. In order to hide or disappear, one may become expressionless, get a frozen face, you don't show emotions. This may lead ultimately into suicide, which is the ultimate way of hiding, disappearing. In order to be on the safe side, one expresses himself only in negative or cynical ways. I recently was at the conference, and there were about 600 people there, and it was just wonderful, inspiring lecture. And there at the discussion, and somebody got up and said, well, I was all the time listening. I was listening to your talk, and I was thinking, what's missing at your talk? And then I found out, and then she said what was missing at the talk and went. So she was just listening, sitting there and listening, what's wrong? That's what I mean, that's negativism. Very important defense mechanism is projection. Shameful aspects of oneself, such as weakness, are projected on others who then are blamed as weaklings. In order not to feel one's own shame, others are forced to feel it. Therefore, others will be shamed, ridiculed, humiliated, disdained, turned into numbers, done away with, and eradicated, especially those who are regarded as weak. In order to conceal one's lack of self-esteem, one puts up a facade of arrogance or of macho masculinity. In order to conceal one's shame, one demonstrates his shamelessness, brags about his ruthlessness, abuse of power, and disdain of humanistic values. Very important one is violence. Through violence, powerlessness is turned into power. I'd rather be a criminal than a nothing. Shame means I'm nothing, I'm not worthy. I'd rather be a criminal than this nothing. For example, a young man running amok in a German school wrote in his suicide farewell letter, quote, "You always ridiculed me, now you must pay for it." Another important defense strategy against shame consists of efforts to restore one's honor.